update on our top story. This morning, it appears that all the people on the ground at that apartment complex in Virginia Beach have been accounted for at this point. That apartment complex that was hit by that F18 fighter jet.
And it's a remarkable story because a lot of people now crediting the pilot of that aircraft that crashed, that he dumped all his fuel, which really prevented this fire from growing and possibly causing a lot more damage and also causing more injuries and deaths. But so far we're told that there have been no reported deaths and all people have been accounted for. After that amazing crash, and we've seen this happen in San Diego where unfortunately the outcome was not the same here in San Diego. But a lot of it has to do with the pilot.
And their reaction. Joining us this morning is former Air Force pilot and supersonic jet instructor Bill Hensley with more on his perspective on the situation. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I just want to start with, from what we've heard so far, as to what may have caused this crash. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Navy spokesman said that they suspect catastrophic mechanical malfunction, and I think that is a good thing to a good path to go on initially. But remember, this is all just a speculation. The good thing is that both pilots have survived, so we're going to know ultimately exactly what happened. Also, the fact that there was an instructor pilot plus a pilot who had his wings who was just upgrading into the F-15, into the F-18 on this aircraft is a good chance that pilot error was probably pretty low on the scheme of things.
But what's going through a pilot's mind when something like this is happening? Because, you know, things change in a matter of seconds, split seconds, really. And a lot of these pilots are relying on their training that they've had to undergo before things like this happen.
What a great question. That's exactly right, because these routine behavior patterns and actions that a pilot has to do to manipulate the controls of an aircraft have to become habits. It has to be second nature. And that's what is so glorious about military flight training. It's a year-long process. It weeds out everybody who can't handle it. It's about a 52-week process where about 40% of the people generally will wash out. And they're not picking from the bottom of the application pool when they put people into this program. So this is the best of the best, and they have years and years of practice preparation to get them to the point of being able to fly an aircraft like this in a high-stress situation.
And this happened so quickly. We're talking about the base that was located. It was just west of where that plane went down. Didn't even have a chance to get to the ocean, we understand.
Yes.
I'm interested because here in San Diego we have a couple of bases, of course,
yes,
where you have Navy pilots flying out of. And how much goes into studying the location, things that are near the bases? For instance, in this particular case, there was a school nearby, and apparently they say those pilots, they really banked right. Can they make the assumption that they knew there was a school there, that they know what's in front of them?
Well, the underlying principle is that when these departure paths and arrival paths to airports, particularly for high-performance jet aircraft, when these are developed, every aspect is examined and the absolute safest departure track is designed, and these pilots are on that track on departure. So they know when they're designing these paths where is the safest place where minimal damage would be caused if an aircraft were to crash. When an aircraft malfunction does occur, which pilots have to determine, do I turn left or right, they will do that to the greatest extent possible. And I guarantee you that these pilots were aware of what was around them, not specifically what that particular red building was down there, but in general, where the minimum danger would be if the aircraft would come down to the ground.
And if it is a mechanical error, which they're saying it probably and likely is in this scenario, then there are other things that pilots fall back on if they're forced to land or crash into a populated area like this was. And in this case, the pilot dumped his fuel. Is that part of the training that goes into, it's in their mindset? You know, look at all different aspects. How can you minimize the damage?
Absolutely. Minimizing damage both to the aircraft and to anybody on the ground and to the pilots themselves is always a foremost. And safety comes with number one in saving lives. In terms of dumping fuel, some aircraft have the capability to dump fuel, others don't. If they do have that, they'll do it because it will minimize the fire on the ground and it'll allow the aircraft to stay airborne if it's lost one engine and it has less capability, weight, less weight. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And we look at the damage there. It's just astounding that at this point we do not know of anyone that was killed in this crash. Several injuries. They said when the pilot went down, which a lot of people are talking about the fact that when he went down, one of the pilots, when one of the people that lived in the complex approached him, he said, I'm so sorry. He was very apologetic. I think that struck a chord with a lot of people.
That does strike a chord, and that also shows you that don't forget these are complex machines, but they're operated by humans. And it also shows you that he was coherent enough to realize the significance of the task that he undertakes every time he straps into that jet, and that his life and lives of people on the ground are at stake.
When you look back, Mr. Hensley, to what happened here in San Diego back in 2008,
yes,
unfortunately it wasn't the same outcome. There were a lot of deaths in the situation, and it looked like there may have been some type of error. The court has ruled, of course, that the military and the government was responsible for this pilot error in that situation. Can you go back to that? I'm sure you've studied that a little bit and describe what happened that was different in this situation versus what happened in San Diego?
Okay, in this particular situation that happened yesterday, it was a critical phase of flight. It was immediately after takeoff, and they had very little time to react. In the situation, from what I understand from media reports and reading the crash report of the local incident, is that some judgment was called into question in terms of where the pilot was directed to land, overflying a suitable field, which was North Island, versus flying, and proceeding all the way to Miramar. So one of the things that pilot training is all about is developing judgment. Almost anybody can be taught to manipulate the controls of an aircraft given enough time. But developing judgment is really what pilot training and high-speed jet flying is all about. And sometimes, usually it works out very well, because if it didn't, you'd have a crash every day. But when it doesn't, unfortunately, there are sometimes the results of loss of human life.
And you're talking about the pilot here, but it's important to note there are a lot of people involved. There are people that are servicing these jets. There are people on the ground in the control towers. I mean, this takes a lot of teamwork.
Great point to bring up. Realize the pilots are just the tip of the spear, but we only are able to get those aircraft in flight because of the engineers that design them, the people that maintain them, the controllers that control us and give us advice when we're out and we need direction in an emergency situation. The pilot is, believe me, very cognizant and thankful for all of the people that give him the ability to fly the jet.
Well, being a pilot, one of the few jobs out there where truly your life hangs in the balance based on your own decision-making process and the leadership skills that you have learned over the years and through the training programs. Your book, The Pilot, Leadership, Learning Leadership, talks about that and how people should approach their jobs, whether you're a pilot, a police officer, or maybe you're an accountant, as if your life depended on it. Talk about these leadership skills that you've seen translated from the field of being a pilot to other business fields in different industries.
Sure. Well, that was the purpose of writing the book. After years of teaching people how to fly supersonic jets, these principles and concepts just started to come up to the surface, and it became very evident that if everybody performed their jobs the way that pilots fly supersonic jets, that the world would be different. And the point is that it is possible to do, and we articulate that in several simple concepts that anybody can take and apply to their job and operate it as if they are in a high-stakes environment.
All right, we appreciate your perspective today. Certainly, as you mentioned, a thorough investigation will go into what happened here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bill Hensley, thank you so much. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right.